Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Sentrama Masterclass. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Brian, and I'll be hosting our session. Joining us in our audience today are sales, revenue, and marketing-focused leaders from across the UK and the US alike. In today's session, we'll be delving into mastering outbound calling, how you crack the code for 2024 and beyond. Oh, and just by the way, spoiler, it's not AI. Shortly, I'll introduce our speakers for today's session, who'll walk us through market intelligence and Sentrama's leading approach to generating a valuable new business pipeline and qualified sales appointments. Towards the end of our session, there will be an opportunity to ask questions, so please use the chat function throughout the masterclass to share your questions or your thoughts. Our hope is that you, as leaders, will walk away with actionable insights, be in a better position to benchmark your current practices and further your understanding on how to best act in the ever-changing market. Today, I'm excited to host alongside our speakers, Robbie and Callum. And to give you some brief introductions, Robbie is a seasoned B2B seller and marketing expert with over 15 years of experience selling into the world's largest companies. And as managing director and co-founder of Sentrama, his legendary team specialized in human-driven lead generation strategies and empowering sales teams to engage and convert ideal clients through innovative, personalized outreach. On the other hand, we've got Callum, who's got over 3 years of successful management in performance roles, including a strong background in sales, B2B lead generation, and business strategy. Callum oversees all of our product operations, encompassing customer success, sales development, and product innovation. His mission is to deliver end-to-end operational excellence, enhancing client portfolio experience across our whole end-to-end. So, in today's session, we'll be looking at exploring best practices for booking sales appointments, the tricks to flexible scheduling modules, warm sales calls, and the setup for success and the benefits that you can see from the back of warm calling. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to our two speakers today.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much for the incredibly kind introduction. It's always, it's interesting. It's interesting to hear when someone describes you in that way, but very kind, and I'll take every single sort of compliment that came with it. And I'll kick us off, Rob, I think, this slide. So, guys, thanks for joining. I think this is a really important topic. It's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about within Sentrama. It's obviously a huge part of our service offering, our product offering. So I think a really good place to start, actually. So, what is warm calling? To not go sort of too definition-based with it, I guess, to begin with, but warm calling, for those that don't know or don't necessarily use it, is basically when a salesperson, or in our case, a sales development representative, contacts a prospect with whom they've had sort of prior interaction with. So unlike cold calling, where there is no previous connection, warm calling involves leveraging our Sentrama platform, in our case, but basically the two other core outbound channels, which are LinkedIn and email. So I think a sort of critical challenge, I guess, for business owners, sales leaders, is making their teams efficient. And what I mean by that is, how many meetings can you book or opportunities can you create from the time and human resource that you have available? So the more efficient you are, the more conversations that you have that are over 1 minute in length, which is a really key metric for us here at Sentrama. The more meetings you confirm, and then the more successful that your outbound sort of strategy is. Now, I just want to briefly sort of circle back slightly and talk about having more conversations that are over 1 minute in length. So by leveraging, I guess, previous engagement at the beginning of a call to then seeking permission to continue, for us at Sentrama, is what converts the most phone connections to then conversations, and conversations to then meetings. And I think warm calling is an incredibly important part of any outbound strategy. And we talk a lot about human to human touch points. And despite all the technology that we have in-house, and obviously other sales teams leverage, the phone conversation and that person to person relationship is what delivers the best results. And I think that for me is where warm calling is at the heart of our outbound strategy, and certainly to make the other digital channels more effective needs to be part of any outbound strategy. Would be my piece on that. Would you agree, Rob?
Yeah, 100%, Callum. I think, I mean, there's a lot behind warm calling and the way it's all set up. I think the fundamental, particularly for us and using our platform and with our team, is when you're booking a sales appointment, it's not just a case of getting a time and a date from your ideal customer. What you need to be able to do is relate to them. Maybe there's some pain point exploration that needs to happen, some solution-based selling, and really get to know the prospect on a call. I know you've touched on over a minute, but I think the average call time for us is between 6 to 16 and sometimes 20 minutes plus of a setup for a sales meeting. And that's really all about the quality of the appointment, going through qualification criteria, and really understanding where the prospect currently is. So when the appointment's booked for somebody to take the deal onwards, there is some deal velocity there, and there is some really good insight for the setup as well. So warm calling enables that journey, and enables it's the first step in terms of quality of appointment coming through. I think the days of kind of the volume play and people trying to say that they're gonna get hundreds of appointments booked is the wrong way to be, because it should always be quality over quantity with this. And the warm calling feature and the warm calling setup is definitely the best way to drive that. I think that's the only thing I would add for the sake of time today. And there's a lot in terms of qualification criteria and how to handle that. But yeah, the warm calling is by far the best way to get quality sales appointments booked.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, a headache for every sales leader and probably sales individuals is you want to be able to convert every conversation and every opportunity that you get. And I think when there's a previous touch point to leverage and lay the foundations for what you're then leading on to discuss in that call, then you've got an even better chance. We saw some numbers this week that I think we had one of our senior SDRs had 20 connects by lunch and already had 18 conversations. And actually, I think that sort of initial rapport building, which I'm sure we'll get onto at some point in this workshop, but that rapport building to then sort of permission-based selling gets you into that point where actually 18 out of those 20 went into 1 minute plus. And as Robbie then rightly said there, our calls that then lead to appointments and meetings are lasting anywhere between 6 and sort of 15 minutes. And you don't necessarily get there unless you get into the conversation at the beginning. And I think that's where warm calling and really leaning on that is a proven strategy and something that I think all businesses should be looking to roll out. But yeah, that'd be my initial part of warm calling as well. So next slide, please, Brian, if you will.
Okay, so the concepts and benefits of warm calling. I mean, we could spend hours on this. I think the fundamental is, and this is from a lot of data and a lot of research out in the market. You can see these numbers. You can Google all of this sort of stuff. What the cold calling success rates kind of they can be good if you've got somebody excellent on the phone and knows how to handle it. Okay, so what you need to do is relate to the prospect very quickly and kind of position yourself next to the prospect as somebody who knows what it's about and can help them fundamentally. And maybe you need to understand kind of their current pain points, or need to highlight the current pain points to them. Now, there's lots of ways to do that. Obviously, cold calling success rates get analyzed in the thousands, which is always quite fun to see the stats. But that I think a baseline cold call will transfer for about 4.8%. But if you actually use a more of a permission-based selling approach and actually ask the prospect a little bit about themselves first and build a bit of rapport, you drastically increase your numbers from there. Now, the bit I'd like to focus on with the warm calling element is, in warm calling, it's all around getting the targeted and personalized approach to the prospect there. So there's a few things around that. You set yourself up to have a natural conversation. And obviously, if you've done the warming piece, when you pick up the phone and you speak to the prospect, you've got an anchor point at the beginning of the call that kind of brings you from just being somebody who's just turned up on the phone to somebody who might already be in their subconscious somewhere. They will recognize the reference point you're about to give them, and all of a sudden there's this emotional connection that they already kind of know who you are a little bit, which takes a big barrier out of the call and a big barrier out of the velocity of the call as well. I see our guys and girls in our team using some cracking ways to kind of move that along. They've been referencing GIFs that might have been sent. They're referencing bits of intent data, referencing softwares that we know that the end user is currently using. It instantly accelerates the call coming through, and obviously statistically it adds about 31% improvement in terms of getting the call from connection through to a proper conversation. Now, the research does say that you're just under, or just over 4% more likely to schedule a meeting from warm calling, okay, than you are from a cold call. Okay, now, and warm calling naturally gives you a better setup as well, so the conversion rates are much, much higher. Now, you might say, well, 4%, that's not much, but the reality is every percentage counts when you're relying on connections and valuable time. Okay, so whilst it's earlier on we said it's not a numbers game per se, ultimately you have a number of conversations that you're having, and the game is to make sure those conversations are as good as possible and then go from conversation to meeting and the percentage from there through. So warm calling, far better versus cold calling. There's a lot of data on to make it happen. There's a lot of kind of with the digital outreach, a lot of tricks, tips that we would deploy for you as a platform, Sentrama. But ultimately, if you get it right, it drastically improves your chances of, when you're on the call with somebody, taking them through to a proper conversation and then into an actual appointment that's set up properly. There is also stats which we're not showing on the screen here, where it does suggest that the no-show rates on cold calling is much higher than a warm call. So in other words, if it's a warm call, the percentage likelihood of them actually turning up to the sales appointment that you've booked is much, much higher, and they'll be more excited to talk and will understand what they're about to talk about in more depth. So that's my take on the concepts and benefits of warm calling. Is there anything you want to add there, Callum?
No, not massively. I think it's probably for another time, but I think, we'll get onto it slightly, I think, in the next slide as well. I do, but that we're talking a lot around the numbers there that are, I think, quite large in terms of the impact, the difference and the impact that warm calling can make. But there's a lot that gets you to that point, and I know I'm about to go onto it there, but you need to have an outreach strategy, an outreach process that allows you to gather the warm data for you then to leverage and utilize warm calling as much as possible to then deliver those results. So I think very good, Brian. I didn't even have to ask you to move on to the next slide. That is exceptional. So yeah, I'm going to sort of move into what we call is our Sentrama framework and how we deliver a warm sales call, really. So I just referenced there, but a lot of my time and mine and Robbie's and Roman, who's Robbie's fellow co-founder to Sentrama, and the conversations that we have internally are about setting the sales team up for success. So what does that look like? Have we got accurate, responsive data? And I think this is an incredibly important aspect of any outbound activity, whether it's digital channels or over the phone. At Sentrama, we spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resource on leveraging intelligent data and active AI, really. So through partnering with a group of data providers and then a detailed understanding of intent signals and intent data, we basically identify key decision makers that are responsive, verified, and aligned to the message that we're going to take to market. From the conversations that we have and with sales teams and individuals, they do not value data quality to the level required. And I think there's a stat on the screen. There is that 39%, looks high. So 39% of businesses don't use data effectively. That looks incredibly high, but it certainly doesn't surprise me. And Robbie can certainly testify to that with the conversations that he has with clients of ours, that, you know, when we talk a lot around how we use data, that often is what really intrigues them and you know, gets them into the conversation that we're having, and certainly encourages them to explore how we go about our process. So I think that's the first piece from me. Secondly, absolutely critical, you know, does the team have the product knowledge, the market understanding to capitalize on the warm conversations that we're focused on today? So, you know, we've built a sales playbook, which I'm incredibly proud of, which sort of guides the team towards the best angle, the best hook, and the best call structure for that client or product. And, you know, you can have a sort of a warm calling strategy that gets you into the conversation, but it's that piece there that really then allows you to capitalize on the opportunity that you've got. And I think it's important to acknowledge, and this sort of moves on to the second point on the slide, that if you don't have the infrastructure, the technology, the resource, the environment in place, it's challenging to get results from any outbound activity that you do. And that includes setting up the team for success, like I just discussed, but also upskilling and training the team. You know, we've gone down a model where we have a team of very senior SDRs who don't require as much support as sort of traditional young, inexperienced outbound sales teams. And I can't stress enough that warm calling only works if the team is equipped with the right knowledge, are objection ready, and targeting the right data. And that, you know, we'll sit here and talk about outbound calling strategies and a masterclass on outbound calling, but actually it's really the striker scoring the goal at the end. Really, there's a lot of work that goes into that point, and someone's got to make the assists. And actually, it's what I've sort of talked around on this slide there, that is the bit that doesn't necessarily take the glory, but is critical to us scoring the goal at the end. And that's sort of how I put it.
It's you're bang on there, Callum. I mean, it's almost to a point when you're attuned to it, you know what's going on. With warm calling and cold calling, is when you receive them. I quite enjoy receiving cold calls now. Quite a lot, obviously. But you can always pick up in the call, basically, what's wrong in their approach. So you know if it's bad data, you know that their targeting's off and it's actually started from data. You often know that somebody's the sales function is not senior and they're working off a script rather than off a playbook. Obviously, playbook mentality is really cool for us because it gives our team a little bit more freedom to have a proper conversation rather than a robotic sales pitch to the prospect. And obviously, and knowing what the objections are that could come and how to handle them is absolutely critical. And of your 3 points there, Callum, I sometimes like to just test people on the phone to see kind of which element they haven't had, so to speak. And it's not easy. It's really not easy to get right. The framework certainly helps, and I would probably imagine that 39% in terms of data not being used effectively, I imagine it's probably a lot higher if people are really honest about it. The importance of the setup of the data play is critical. Yeah, the beauty of the playbook piece, Callum, and then they are excellent playbooks we see going around the business here, is it gives our team a really, really clear to work to, and they can have some fun with the calls and come across a lot more natural and a lot more likable. And that first conversation, people buy from people. They instantly decide through the call whether they like you and whether they're going to engage with you. So giving people that proper setup is absolutely critical. So that's what I'd add to that one.
Yeah, and I think we'll move on to the next slide, but expensive as well, right, Rob? I think, you know, a lot of money and investments poured into data, building out a team, resource, personnel, training, environment piece, and everything that I sort of mentioned in my last point there. It's super expensive, and I know that's sort of where we sit in the market, because we can do it at a sort of fraction of the cost of building out your own sort of sales engine. But Yeah, I think that's another thing to be super aware of, which I'm sure the guys on the call today are aware of, because they'll be looking to build out their sales team, sales function as well. So
time as well. It's not just cost, Callum. It's time.
yes, yeah, absolutely. As we know all too well, that's all we focus on, and it's still a lot of time. So I'll get moving, because I know we're short on time. So best practice when it comes to outbound calling, and how do we set up success? I think there's a perfect balance between knowing your customer or prospect and who you're calling, but also reaching enough prospects at scale. So rapport building and a permission-based sort of selling approach gives you 30 to 40 seconds at the beginning of a call to bring up a prospect's website and tailor the conversation. I know that's something that our team do a lot with the technology that we use, and they're able to do that. But during that first 30 to 40 seconds, instead of researching a prospect before, they are using and capitalizing on that first 30 to 40 seconds where they built rapport and then asked for permission to approve, to then bring up a prospect's website and tailor the conversation if you then get approval to proceed. Warm calling supports that rapport and relationship building and increases your chance of progressing through that permission-based question. And that's why it's super important, as we touched on earlier. What I mean by that is effectively, a contact point prior to a call, followed by a permission-based selling approach, lays the foundation to ask an open question and then qualify in or out the opportunity. If you have then a sales team that's capable of doing that, the meetings confirmed are incredibly valuable, and you'll see conversion of those meetings skyrocket. So I think as we walk through that, and we'll talk a little bit about personalization, but that for me, letting the prospect, once you've got approval to proceed, dictate the conversation will naturally allow you, if you're confident and comfortable at listening and feeding back and asking the right questions, to qualify in or out the prospect. And we talk to our team a lot about that, because for us, when we're booking qualified meetings for our clients, we only want to put them in front of opportunities that are going to be a good use of time, are hopefully going to progress, and are going to be of a lot of value. So I think that's a really important piece to take away from this workshop, which is, once you get in and you've had approval to proceed, continue in that manner and let the prospect really dictate the conversation. And you have to be a really confident seller to be able to do that. And again, why we've sort of gone down the senior SDR model is because they're people that have had the experience and are comfortable in silence, despite also, obviously, like any salesperson, loving the sound of their own voice as well, says the man who's talking to a group of people right now.
One thing I would say,
yeah,
I think the qualifying out piece, I don't think it's talked enough about in the industry, and I think people are very scared to do it because they feel like they're going to lose an opportunity. But a very good caller and a very good salesperson will know the right way to qualify out in the benefit of everybody. And as you touched on there, that's a huge piece for quality as well, the quality of the appointment. I've seen countless times on phone calls I've received, and I hear it from other agencies as well, where people are just, once they've got somebody on the phone and they've got them on the run, they just don't want to qualify them out, which is a little bit scary because you end up getting bad quality mixed in there. And I don't think the industry of SDRs and outbound professionals talk about qualifying out enough. It's a really important skill set that everybody should learn.
Yeah, completely agree. Brian, I'm very wary of time, so could you sort of flick through actually onto the next slide, because I want to be able to make sure that Rob can outline some key takeaways from today. I think that's just a piece from us that we'd like to share. I think I had a little bit of a spiel about the blend of sort of seniority that we book, the different approaches that you can take. But I think for me, for any persona that you sort of approach, it's around cutting through the noise, but having a very structured and consistent approach is what allows you to confirm meetings with the type of executives that are on screen. No matter what the seniority, people are receptive to a well-structured, warm outreach, cold outreach, even at times, if it's a conversation and it's just about as much about their pain points as what you're trying to position and sell. And I think that's again another important sort of takeaway from this workshop today. So Brian, if you could move on to the next slide as well, please, mate, that'd be great. There we go, Rob. Set yourself up there.
Thank you very much, sir. So key takeaways. We've flown through it today, guys, and maybe what I'd suggest, if you've got any questions or anything you want to cover off in more detail, please get in touch with us. You find us on LinkedIn. This is all, we're on YouTube, etc. as well. So do just send us direct questions, and maybe we can give you a call or we can cover it off in another session. But the key takeaways are: it all starts with data. Just think about it like a rocket ship. If the rocket ship's a few angles off, it very quickly misses the target, is miles off. Okay, so data is absolutely critical, and also leveraging intelligence in the data as well, which we've actually got a separate workshop on how to do that. But leveraging the intelligence in the data is really key. Warm calling is a pivotal part of 2024 and beyond. I think we've gone on this big cycle as a sales community of going, COVID happened, everybody went digital outbound, and now it's gone full cycle to actually the place that gets the most results is from calling in terms of quality of appointment. MQLs and SQLs is a very different thing, but in terms of quality of appointment, warm calling is by far the strongest method to use. Obviously, 82% of buyers there accept meetings from sellers on the phone. Okay, so it's really, really key that you've got a solid calling strategy, basically, is what we're trying to say here. Never leave an opportunity to go cold. Okay, so you might be on a phone call or outbound, you might be talking to the ideal prospect, and they turn around and say to you, this all sounds fantastic, but I'm not going to have a budget for 3 months, and we're not going to look at this for another 3 months. Listen to that, mark them as an SQL, a sales qualified lead. Make sure you then nurture them and then call them again when the time is right. Don't just push for the appointment because you're just going to waste everybody's time and blow the opportunity completely. Be smart about it and don't let that opportunity go cold. And obviously, the key piece is having the technology to support your outbound efforts. Now, we haven't touched on that much in this session. Obviously, we have the Sentrama platform, which enables warm calling and effective calling for us and our clients. And also there are various bits of tech that allow you to be really efficient with calling and also measure the quality of calling as well, which we have in-house here and built out as a Sentrama team. So technology is really key. If you've got any questions around technology and how to implement it, I would urge you to get in contact either with myself or Callum directly or any member of the Sentrama team, and we can run you through what's needed. You've got to be able to be flexible. End-to-end management, right from data through to qualified appointment, is key, and there's a lot of curves that happen there. There's a lot of work that needs to happen to really get a good call in place. And what you've got to remember is you're looking for a quality appointment, a quality setup for that appointment as well. Don't just push for any old sales appointment. You need to make sure it's a quality appointment coming through. Quality over quantity always wins the return on investment challenge. So yeah, I think that's the key takeaways, guys. Do we have any questions, Brian?
We do have one. In terms of the outbinding process, how do you really succeed with personalization?
Okay. I'm gonna, as we recently discussed this, Rob, so I'm actually going to pass it over to you because you position it probably better than I can, and I'll then build on it if I've got anything to add.
Okay, so personalization depends on what channel you're using the personalization on. In the context of calling, digital, so let's say LinkedIn and email in the B2B environment, the personalization needs to be designed to be a conversation starter. That is it. Okay. So I know there's lots of sexy tools out there that are telling you it's going to be able to build the perfect email to pitch to a client, etc. The reality is AI isn't quite there yet. What you need to do is come up with sophisticated conversation starters that enable people to realize who you are and want to talk to you. From a calling perspective, that then gives you a very good anchor point. We have lots of digital personalization examples on our website and on our socials, which you guys can check out. From a calling perspective, it's all about the right message to the right person at the right time. And actually, when you're opening the call, you're not fumbling around to try and relate to them. You have got a very clear, okay, this is the persona I'm talking to. So they're a CTO. Inherently, they're going to be quite skeptical. right? And they're quite process driven. That's why they do what they do, right? And quite rightly so. Okay, how do I build rapport with them? I need to show that I have technical expertise. I need to show that I already understand what software they're using. So you're using all this sales intelligence and the data to quickly build that rapport with a person. So you have a conversation started from digital, you swing off of that, and you quickly build the rapport using what you know about the prospect and the environment they're working in. And ultimately have a conversation with them, let them talk.
Yeah.
Tell you about themselves, let them open up. We're all human, right? People love talking about themselves, whether they admit it or not. They love talking about themselves. So encourage that.
Yeah, I'd just piggyback on that slightly. I think if you solely sort of think about outbound calling and personalization without outbound calling, I know a lot of it's encouraged that you do your research before you give someone a call. You understand something from their LinkedIn profile or something that they've done recently. Is their company in the news or whatever it might be? If you're going for sort of a high volume approach, which I would certainly argue is required in any outbound strategy, if you approach the call in the right way and you're asking the right questions, they will give you something to work off and leverage. As Robbie rightly said there, they'll give you the personalization piece if you're having the right conversation. So don't necessarily worry about the research that comes first. Structure the conversation in the right way and they'll give you something to then build a relationship off or leverage within that conversation. So that'd be my piece on that.
Cool.
Perfect.
Well, thank you both so very much for sharing your thoughts today. I'm sure that everyone in the audience agrees that it's not easy generating new business pipeline opportunities, especially throughout today's context in the market. With the thought leadership, what we'd like to offer those in attendance today is an incredible value offer. It's one opportunity for a free appointment within your proposed ideal customer profile. So to be able to sort of buy in on that, our team will be out and reaching out to you within the next 24 hours to gather some feedback and to propose the opportunity to meet our team and discuss what that partnership would look like. But thank you again from us here at Sentrama for joining our masterclass and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, Brian. Cheers, guys.
And thanks, guys. Thanks, Cal.
Cheers, all.